In the previous lecture, we executed a few first commits, so we're finally tracking different versions of certain files. And we can even take a look at that list of commits by executing git log. And you can see that indeed I have 3 commits in here. The first one where I added all of the default files, the second one where I changed the text of the label, and the third one in which I added an entry to the main page. However, so far, I only have the default master branch, and I have mentioned throughout this course that we really should have 3 different branches if we want the CI/CD process to be executed as best as possible. And while the relationship between CI and CD and the branches is not yet going to be explained, it is important that we learn how to create those branches and work with them. So during this lecture, I am going to be creating the other 2 branches, the dev and the test branch, and I'm going to show you how you can both switch between them, commit in one of them, and merge into another one. Something similar to what we saw in the first lecture of this section, when we had a dev branch that had some commits and eventually committed them or merged them to the test branch, and the same with the test branch, which had some of its own commits and then committed them or merged them to the master branch. So let's see how that would work. Let's start by creating the 2 branches. And if you execute git branch in here, you're going to see a list of all of the branches that your current Git repository has. And in our case, by default, only one branch is going to be listed, the master branch. We want to create 2 more branches, and I will start with the test branch. Now, normally what you do is create the branch and then switch to that branch. But we can do both of those things with one single command, similar to what we did at the end of the previous lecture with the -am flag when we commit, which both added and committed the recent changes. So what we can do is execute git checkout. Now git checkout by default, all it does is switch us from one branch to another. But if we pass the -b flag in here, it is also going to be creating the branch. So if we say git checkout -b test, the test branch is going to be first created, and then we're going to be switched to that branch. So if we execute this, you can see how indeed we were switched to a new branch, test. And if we run git branch again, we see that indeed there are now 2 branches, master and test is selected because that is the branch where we're currently working on. Finally, let me create the dev branch as well. The process is exactly the same. I will type git checkout -b because this branch does not exist yet, and type the name of the new branch to which I am also going to be switching to. Execute this, and you see that we switch to a new branch. Execute git branch again, and now we see 3 branches. The dev branch being the one selected because we have just switched to it. Now, if we execute git checkout without the b flag, for example, checkout to master, we're simply going to be switching to an existing branch. For example, the master branch, or the test branch, or the dev branch. We can switch between them without that b flag because they already exist. We're simply switching between the existing branches. We only use the b flag when the branch has to be created before we switch to it as well. So we already have these branches, but the reason why we have these branches is precisely because we want to separate the work that we are doing. And what I mean by this is simply that we want to add most of our commits directly to the dev branch, as I mentioned in the first lecture for this section. And once those changes are ready to be tested, then I can merge them to the test branch. And once those changes have been fully tested and are ready for our users to use, then and only then am I going to be merging them into the master branch. So that is exactly what we're going to do in the next lecture. Follow that entire flow of the changes that we made from the dev branch to the master branch. Now, so far, we're not really going to be making any tests. We're just going to be focusing on the branches, how we can commit in the dev, merge to test, and then merge to master. But this is a very important process, one that is going to, if executed correctly, trigger the entire continuous integration, continuous delivery process. For now, you already know how to create new branches, switch between them. So in the next lecture, let's start using them.